afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another conversation with Amoda Maa. Hello, Amoda.
Hello, Kavi.
So today we are going to, it's kind of in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but always in the Amoda Maa teaching, we come across people who sort of have touched equanimity, touched peace, touched the grace of beingness, and found something quite, maybe it could even call it stable as an experience of awakened consciousness. And then crisis. Now, how we define crisis will come up in this conversation, but a crisis may occur, and suddenly the storm is raging, and suddenly, one is lost in the storm, and there's a tendency. I think we're talking about a tendency here for the advanced, or maybe not even advanced, spiritual seeker to feel that they've lost something, they've lost the grace, lost the peace, lost the equanimity, and maybe even a sense of failure on the path of awakening, because of this crisis that has come, bidden or unbidden. And so today we're going to kind of unpack that a little bit. I'm going to ask Amoda questions about, primarily, in a nutshell, can crisis be a catalyst for transformation? So there's a lot in there, because it seems very relevant to being in the world, really. This is the nature of how awakened consciousness kind of interacts with the world, which is a very dramatic, crisis-oriented place, and maybe that's just the human experience. So, with that, all that being said, I'm going to hand the floor over to you, Amoda, to unpack this a little bit, to speak to it at the outset, and then we'll naturally kind of flow along and see where it goes. Okay?
Thank you. Yes, this is the spiritual seeker's dilemma. How to abide as peace, how to abide as presence in all circumstances. And the belief or the sense that I got there and then something comes along in life and I'm no longer there is very common, very prevalent. How to deal with this dilemma, how to approach this dilemma. There's a number of ways of exploring this, but perhaps we can start with, first of all, if you like, opening up our understanding of peace and presence. It's very common to believe that peace is an experience of nothing turbulent taking place, that our peace is actually dependent on circumstances. And even for the spiritual seeker who's in some ways gone beyond that, when stuff happens, it's easy to be sort of thrown back into that belief. Or at least the desire to feel peaceful. And so we have to kind of really open up to within ourselves an understanding or a knowing, or at least a willingness to know that there is a peace that passeth all understanding, that is not dependent on circumstances. And that's really pointing to the realization that that which is aware that which is ever present in all circumstances, whether they're turbulent or calm, is never changed. There's a quality of being, there's a quality of awareness that never changes. And that's something that very often on the path is a deepening realization, and one that when stuff happens, when crisis happens, when a challenge comes along, when intensity or turbulence comes along, that's when we're, if you like, called to deepen that recognition. So what I'm kind of saying here, as well as a number of things, is that awakening isn't a static state. So a true, profound, genuine awakening that brings us into the realization of true nature, it doesn't stop there, because the human journey continues, and the human journey is like the waves on the ocean. It's always changing, and turbulence can come and unexpected circumstances come, and that has nothing to do with awakening or not. And it's in those turbulent moments or circumstances or times of our lives, even in the awakened realization, that the deepening into what is really peace, what is really presence, what is really the recognition of awareness as the ever-present state, it's like it matures, it becomes more and more matured or embodied through the experience of that crisis or turbulence. It's not that something's gone wrong. It's not that you've lost something. It's a call to more fully, more deeply embody and realize it. So such circumstances, the storm is a powerful catalyst for a deeper transformation, for the embodiment of that transformation, the embodiment of that realization. And I think that knowing that, understanding that, and really being willing to embrace that is the beginning of it. It doesn't end. It's an ever deepening journey, if you like, because at some point we're all going to meet death, and awakened or not, that can also bring up fear or resistance or whatever hasn't really been examined, because we only meet death once. And we can only meet it when it actually takes place. So there is another possibility to know the light of beingness. So every aspect of life, as we move into the move through the human experience, is another invitation.
So, I hear a lot in what you're saying, and the first thing is, in a way, I hear you speaking to, some of the sages of the past, or some of the wise ones, St. John of the Cross, who some of these mystics, for instance, who found their freedom through suffering, which is the same thing, because ultimately what we're talking about, crisis, is a modern word for it's creating suffering.
Yes.
And and in a way, the sort of nuanced modern idea, and particularly in the Western individual, is that somehow spirituality is going to offer either an avoidance or a distance from the human experience, which has suffering implicit within it, as you just said. And so this is you're talking about something which is very important to understand. It's not just about impermanence; it's about the crisis of being human, which obviously has very many different ramifications for each human being. But I hear you talking about not intellectualizing it, but actually becoming intimate with one's experience, whatever it is.
Yes, and so another way of saying this, or perhaps exploring this, is to invite within ourselves. Yeah, the invitation is to meet reality without without any commentary, without any narrative, without this shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't be happening because I'm awakened. So if it is happening and I'm awakened or have realized a certain awakened consciousness, then it means that I haven't, I'm not good enough spiritually. I haven't got there yet. I've lost it. And so this kind of battle ensues with reality. And so the invitation is that whatever happens, whether it's crisis or injury or challenge or death or loss or something unexpected, to continually meet that without a commentary about it, to meet the nakedness of the experience, which is part of the human experience. Pain is pain. Yeah? Intensity is intensity. It's not something that gets erased. And to continually meet it, if you like, with the deepest surrender of the narrating mind, and that's an ongoing invitation.
Right. So I hear that very clearly from you, that it's an ever unfolding, ever deepening journey. It's very alive. It's an alive inquiry. It's an alive meeting, intimacy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think one of the primary errors, we go back to the beginning of this conversation, is on the spiritual path, this either conscious or unconscious idea that if I realize something, if I realize true nature, if I taste the grace of awakening, and so on, that's it. That's the end. There's no more turbulence. There's no more, and so on. And yes, the way that we meet turbulence changes. But when the next wave of turbulence comes, and that's unexpected, then we're called to meet that again in this way. And that's often overlooked because of this idea that it shouldn't be happening. So yes, it's a living inquiry. It's a living embodiment. And we can go to the situation or the story or whatever it is of Jesus on the cross. Yeah. Who we can say was the light of beingness, the embodiment of the light of God. And yet when he's crucified, what does he say? Oh, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? What does that mean? That means that I've lost it. I've lost that light of Godness in me because I'm in so much excruciating pain. There's physical pain. There's also psychological pain because of the injustice of it. He was crucified and it was very unjust. There was no reason. He wasn't a criminal, and so on and so on. And then he had to go deeper. He had to go deeper than his victim self. Oh, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? It's not the circumstance. It's the internal experience. It's the internal landscape. And I'd like to think that, in that he was able to go deeper into the peace that passeth all understanding.
Was it we don't know, but was it just after he'd said that then, something deeper happened to him. And then he said, into thy hands I give I can't remember the exact words, I give myself, which to me interprets in that way as a deeper surrender.
Yes.
Even
yes.
even
this. That's
yes. The statement, isn't
right.
it? It's even
because
this.
The world has injustice in it. The world has physical and psychological pain in it, and the world has misunderstanding in it, and the world has division and this, that, and the other.
Judgment.
The world is a we could say a cesspit of division. And Jesus was not immune to that. He lived in the world, in the marketplace, on a human level. And so even he had to meet a deeper place, or be open, or be willing for a deeper surrender. And that's for all of us, in a small way or a big way, when the shit hits the fan, so to speak.
So
then yes.
Sorry, can I ask you for, I'm going to put you on the spot and say, and invite you. Can you find something within yourself, that some experience, a direct experience, that is actually, because the kind of question is, as an awakened teacher that you had an experience many years ago, 20 odd years ago, but then there's still been a life, and we've had quite a life since I met you, that has involved much in the world. I mean, we moved to America. We've all meant so many things, and they haven't always been easy. What's happened to Amoda in that time? Has the boat been shaken? Has the ground, what's your human experience, your harmony between the two, the ever unfolding journey?
I think, looking back over those 20 years, there's been a very rich human experience. And I mean rich in that it has many, a depth and breadth of experience, both challenging and, I don't know what the opposite of that is.
Exquisitely beautiful.
Yes, all of that. And I would say that all of it has been met in the way that we're speaking. Certainly, there has been no. For myself, I can say that I did not rail against the turbulence of life. It just wasn't my way. I think I'd come to such a deep place of surrender that I can't live any other way. I can't be any other way. So whatever is. And whatever human experience it is, it is. I don't think, I don't feel that there's been any resistance to what is. There are some situations that sometimes are intense and require digging in deep. But that's usually to do with a very worldly situation.
Yeah. Money.
And one that I'm perhaps not familiar with previously, or have experience in, or skill, and need to navigate. And that can be difficult. But I can honestly say that there's no, I got it, I lost it. I can honestly say that there hasn't been any resistance to the human experience. I can honestly say that the abidance of presence and openness has never veered. I mean, we can look back right from fairly early on after awakening, which is when we met. And one was your journey of quite severe and sudden and chronic illness and the meeting of that.
Yeah.
And then very shortly afterwards, a few years after that, the death of my mother and the, if you like, turbulence that created, which could have been drama. But I think I can honestly say that wasn't met from the drama, from the victim. I think what ended for me through everything categorically was the victim self.
Yeah.
That's what came undone. So whatever happens, I might not like it.
Mm.
Of course, I wouldn't. Certain things I don't like. I'd rather they weren't happening. But I don't go there. It's not like that. The victim of life, the victim of circumstances, truly has come undone. And even in the midst of those challenges or feeling out of depth or, what to do, what action to take, I think what always reveals itself that everything is an opportunity for growth. And in my case, I feel that the growth is actually on a worldly level.
Mm.
And the undoing of fear, whether it's fear around money, which is something karmic and historical that I've carried, or the fear of, I don't know, whatever it is. Usually it's something to do with money or, to do with the mechanism of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a little bit like Jesus railing against the tax collectors. It's that kind of situation.
Well, he had that right, didn't he? He had that right.
He did, yes. So, the matrix of the world, which is actually built of unconsciousness and greed and corruption. And I don't rail against that. But, when it hits home, there's a sense of that. But I feel it's a call to growth on a worldly level, on a human level. I don't feel that the abidance of presence or openness actually ever changes. It just is what it is. There's nothing, I don't feel a victim. There's no kind of...
I hear you very clearly, because in my experience of you has been, through the rather dramatic sometimes the whole thing with me, your mother, and then America, navigating the matrix of the system in America has had its very hairy, and still does have its very hairy kind of moments. But I would say that you've led the way between the two of us, primarily, I think, because of the abidingness, because of the groundness of the end of the victim self. And that, in a sense, is the end of the tight knot of me, so still the experiences continue, but they're experiences that come, and then, yes, they have an energetic impact, and they need to be attended to. But it's almost like when they're done, like the duck that gets into a kerfuffle on the pond. It deals with it, and then off it goes again. There's nothing, like I think you said this morning in one of our events, there's nothing polluting about it anymore. So, whether one frames that as being a catalyst for transformation or just dealing with what is as it arises, they're sort of synonymous in a way. But as what I hear is that the end of the victim is the end of the tight knot of me. And I'd just like to say, in sharp contrast for you, I think that's why you can speak to it so well, because I think in the you that I didn't know, but the you that you've spoken about in the past, there was very much me, and there was very much the, a deep-seated sense of the victim of life. I mean,
Absolutely.
I would still say that you were probably mystically talented or you gifted or graced or something, even during those times. But there's the end of the victim, which is why I think you know this very well.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I think that's the way it was. Um, I think I had a natural proclivity for surrender as a way of being. Um, but I did carry a sense of punishment, being punished by life, being
Yes, yes.
unloved by God, really. And it was subtle and it was hidden, and sometimes it played itself out. And certainly it came more and more to the forefront of my, awareness, conscious awareness that was something that was playing out in me. And it came to an end by itself in awakening. I didn't know it was awakening, but then I realized that's what it was. Um, and uh, yes, it's no longer here. And what's also realized and is the sort of the foundation or the ground is that I really saw, I really knew, I really realized it's all a dream. It's all a dream. And yet we have no escape from it. Yeah, we are in life as long as we're alive. And knowing it's a dream, seeing through the veils, um, doesn't make it less exquisitely beautiful or exquisitely horrible. Yeah, it is what it is. The dream is the Leela. The dream is the playing out of the Leela, the the polarity, the duality, the black and white, the up and down, the left and right, the sun and moon, the night and day, the pain and pleasure, all of it plays itself out. And that's inescapable whilst we're alive. And yet it's impermanent, yet it's like the waves that are constantly rolling on the ocean. They never stop. They can be calm or they can be stormy, and it's forever the waves. And yet, as long as we're alive to experience the waves, and yet all the waves are, if you like, moving and playing themselves out. The Leela is expressing itself in the ocean of beingness. And the energetic realization of the ocean of beingness, and even ocean's not quite right, because an ocean has a kind of coast around it, but really an ocean that has no beginning or end. There's no coastline, there's no shore that's come undone.
Eternal, the
Yeah, the
eternal.
eternal oceanness of it, which is the oneness, the totality. When that's truly realized energetically, not intellectually or philosophically or conceptually, energetically, then the waves are just the waves, and they're not separate from that. And when the one who is alive and has conscious awareness, this form comes to an end, or at least this vehicle comes to an end, then that dream is undone, that Leela is undone. It will continue in another conscious awareness, but it just sort of changes everything. It undoes the victim, it undoes the drama. There's only the exquisiteness of the human experience, which has extremes of one end to the other.
You were when you were young, you were found yourself, unbeknownst to you, unbidden by you, probably. I would hope, in a kind of war situation in yeah in the Mediterranean in Europe, and I know that had a huge impact on you as a child, but then subsequent to that, the dislocation, the shock, the trauma, if you like, you know, endured for many a year. In fact, it shaped some of your life. And I just want to include that because the wars are raging, everywhere. And, I mean, it could happen here in the US. Everybody, there are lots of warmongers, and there always have been. But there is certainly a war consciousness, that's arising, as well as the peace consciousness at the moment. And there's a threshold when the bombs start dropping that you haven't got the luxury of contemplating, how am I going to meet this? And that becomes like beyond even direct, really. I'm not sure what I'm actually asking you here. I'm just kind of wanting to speak to the impact of that, if in a way.
Well, there's two avenues of dialogue here. One is how it was then, and the other one is perhaps considering how it would be now.
Yes, I think so, because the conversation can be from an awakened, in a way, place.
Certainly as a child, and by the way, it wasn't Europe.
Oh, yes, it wasn't Europe.
It wasn't part of the European Union. It was a British colony.
Oh, yes, it was, yes.
And then it wasn't. So, as a child, and I was 11, 12, 13, it was terrifying. That's all I could say. As a child, I went completely into trauma. As a child, I didn't feel protected by my parents because they were children too. As a child, it was a huge shock. As a child, my nervous system was impacted and I became mute, literally mute, and very contracted. And that carried over into my early life, early adult life. And it shaped my experience. It shaped my, I don't know if you'd call it personality, but it shaped my expression, my way of being in the world and what people perceived and how I perceived myself and so on. No, we don't need to necessarily go into more detail, but how is it now? Well, I really can't tell you. I don't carry that trauma anymore. I don't carry that contraction. I can remember it, but I don't go back there to relive it or to, resolve anything. It's done. And it certainly opened me up to the possibility, even at a very young age, that anything can happen anywhere. And what I found when I came back, because we did originally live in England. I was brought up in England, in London. But when we returned to London after the war, we were evacuated. I was quite struck by a certain understandable complacency that war happened. I mean, I didn't really speak to anyone about it, but war happens somewhere else. War happens in the unfortunate countries. War happens in the, I don't know, underprivileged countries or the ignorant countries or whatever it might be. It doesn't happen in the civilized countries, although, of course, First World War, Second World War did happen in the civilized countries. But, at my age, that was not a reality for my peers. And I was struck by that. And I think I carried with me the very real possibility that anything can happen anywhere, at any time. And that was actually something very valuable because I didn't sort of fall back into complacency or privilege or, some imagined safety or comfort zone. I didn't experience life like that. And certainly my life wasn't like that. It was full of unexpected changes and losses and so on. how would it be now? Not carrying that trauma, not carrying that, yeah. Well, I can honestly tell you, I just don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. I, I can't even imagine it because I don't live in the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
To say, well, it's not going to really bother me. I'll be abiding in peace or anything like that. I have no idea, Kavi. If war struck, I'm sure there'd be a terror. I'm sure there'd be, oh no, not this.
Mm.
I don't know. And maybe then there'd be a deeper, just like Christ on the cross, Jesus on the cross. I can't remember the phrase, but was, in this, I give
Yeah.
myself to you. It's almost like what will be, will be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I expect, without expecting, that would be part of it. And yet the the organism, the physiological
Yes.
organism, the
Yes.
human alive, yeah, will probably be terrified.
Yeah.
Of course. It's a natural response to danger. One contracts into a ball,
It's a
or
very primitive, primal sort
yeah.
of
I mean, every
experience.
creature will do that.
Mm.
You do what you need to protect yourself, uh, uh, and so on. But there's a certain place where you have no control,
Mm.
and I would imagine that I would not go mute again like I did when I was a child. Yeah. There's a maturity now and so on,
Yeah.
that would allow that. So, but I haven't got a clue.
So I think I just wanted to include that as a, just to include that very real experience, because there are people experiencing, it now, and it does it does bring it home all the time and does kind of make it real. It sort of touches me somewhere very, very deeply, that experience, because you and I investigate the human experience and the insanity of the rampant egoic mechanism as it's manifesting in the world at the moment, which is close to a kind of insanity who has been around for a long time, but is inflicting itself on many folks. And I think when you're speaking, I hear a difference between, going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, which is a kind of crisis. Some of that is crisis of a domestic kind, of a smaller kind, but then creates the kind of contraction. And then what we're talking about is almost the other end of the pole here, that is a very direct, sort of visceral, animalistic. If somebody's going to start bombing you, you're going to respond like an animal. There ain't nothing that spirituality will do to change that. One's reflection or one's relationship to it might have some bearing, but actually, I think we were talking, weren't we, in a way at the beginning about the crisis of one's own losing it, finding it, losing it, having it, which can happen really very, very easily. Many human beings are living on the edge of that. Can be derailed by something that comes through the mail, can be derailed by a family member, can be derailed by, the partner leaving, saying, I've had enough of you, this relationship, and I'm off. That creates this kind of crisis where we're back in the identified self again. So there are degrees of this.
Yes, I mean, I don't think, now that we're speaking of it, that I would go into victim modality.
No, no.
Why is God
no.
punishing me? That's the ultimate victim modality. That wouldn't be the case. It's just what happens. Yeah, it's the nature of the world in its current state of consciousness. It's a tragedy. And so on. But it's not a punishment from God. So I would like to think that would not be the case.
Yeah. So let me, we're kind of going to probably bring this to an end and at some point. I hear what you're saying is a kind of all-embracing, going back, not talking about war now, but talking about experience. I'm reminded of the great Krishnamurti. Let's just go to this one for a minute. The great Krishnamurti said to his students, the difference between you and me is that I don't mind what happens. I know when I heard that, it completely destroyed me. And has done pretty much ever since, because I couldn't doubt but believe him in what he was saying. And if I believed in what he was saying, there was a human being who could actually deal on a level with equanimity with what happens inside him primarily. And I hear you kind of speaking to that, because I don't mind what happens. For many of us on the path would be separated into, well, I do mind this and I don't mind that. That's what we're talking about. I do mind this. But when that happens, I'm back in self. I don't mind. And what I hear you speaking to is a sort of way of speaking to that, which is all embracing. Is it possible? I always like to ask the question, is it possible for us to open more and more and more?
Well, I can say from my own direct experience, yes. The end of the argument with what is the end of the veiled perception. What is. Whatever is in your experience, which is always an internal experience, even if it seems to be instigated by something that happens, is what it is. And to argue with that is ludicrous. It's from that place of the deepest acceptance of what is as your experience that change can happen, if change is required, if change is intelligent, coming from intelligent action, or, we can call it wisdom, or, I don't mean, again, spiritual wisdom or intellectual
maturity,
wisdom, but either something can be done or something can't be done. Yeah. Either there's a situation in your life that you can address, that you can tend to, you can attend to, you can take action because it's intelligent, it's wise. You cut your hand, then some intelligent action needs to take place to stop the bleeding. War happens, you can't really do anything. Not from that, You can't do anything to stop the war, but you can stop the war within.
So this speaks to the people somebody in the prison, speaks to Viktor Frankl in the concentration camp. It's speaking to those over and over, which is, for many of us in a way, an aspiration. But I think it's a light on the path to say, yes, this is possible. It might not be easy. It's St. John of the Cross. Take my lofty principles and throw them to the wind. I'm here with God in this moment again.
Give me the strength to love only you. What does that mean? That doesn't mean to love you as a deity over there. To love you, the beloved. Yes. Because the beloved is everything, the godness of everything. There's one God, not as an entity, not as a deity, not as something separate to us, but simply the one totality of beingness that is expressing itself as everything, even if that expression is horrific. It's all of it. Give me the power, give me the strength to love only you, to love everything that arises. That doesn't mean that we love war. It doesn't mean that we love tragedy, not in the conventional sense of loving. It means to open to it, to deeply, deeply accept what is taking place in my internal experience, in my experience, because anything else is adding to the division, is adding to the argument, and is increasing the suffering.
So I hear the heart in this, you see. I hear heart in this. And is as the heart kind of, let's say, opens, I don't really like that, but as one opens to the deeper levels of beingness, so does the victim necessarily, ipso facto, die in that. They can't coexist. The openness of the heart and openness of beingness and the victim cannot coexist.
No, the victim dissolves in that. You could say, yes, the victim dissolves in the deepest acceptance. It's only when you're fighting something, it's only when you're arguing with something, it's only when you're resisting with something that
And
there's
that's
a victim.
all, and that's all up here, really, isn't it?
Yes.
Would have to be.
Yes. And again, there's often a misunderstanding of what the heart is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all feely to do with feelings.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
I like all these words are just a very almost reduced understanding of their deeper meaning. So the heart, it's like a gateway, if you like. It's a gateway to beingness. It's a gateway to the vastness, the unboundedness of the ocean, at which point you can't even call it heart, because the heart has a certain location, even energetically, metaphorically, but it's just a doorway. Openness is a doorway to that which is already open, which is the ocean. It's unbounded, the infinite. We can say the ocean of awareness, the ocean of beingness. And the deeper we go into that, or the more that we open on a certain level, that openness is no longer something that we have to go through. It's just here always as an energetic, deep acceptance of what is. And the realization energetically, viscerally, that open awareness, that open presence, that open beingness, just like the sky, is always here, come what may, whatever storm passes through.
Yes.
And that's beyond the heart. Yeah.
So, that's right. Nothing can touch the essence of us. It cannot be touched by the phenomena. The phenomena of the world comes and goes. Nothing can touch the essence. Right. Wow, that's an invitation, huh? So yes, in that sense, I hear you saying crisis can be an invitation or an opportunity for transformation, to enter the gateway of what we call the heart, but isn't really a heart.
Yes, and perhaps we've just been exploring, there's different levels of that. There's different, depending on where we're at. First of all, even embracing the possibility that crisis can be a doorway for transformation or for deepening. And then everything else that we've spoken about. So depending on where each individual is on their own path of awakening, or even, let's not call it awakening, just transformation or the human experience, then we can meet it in different ways. One is acceptance, one is willingness, one is surrender, one is ending the argument and then deepening, and so on and so on.
Well, I remember for myself how it was in those 10 years of being so ill. I was courted death and had to take care and didn't know, was confused and railed against it and felt like the victim, and all of these characters emerged and all of this desperation emerged, and eventually I had to surrender and just, give it all up, really, and still attend to what needed to be attended to.
There was a great tenderness, I know, from myself and, to the situation for both of us, great tenderness to what is. And then attending to it, yes, in whatever way. But that attending didn't come from crisis, drama, trying to repress it, suppress it, stop it, fix it. It came from a much deeper intelligence. which meant that what was attended to had an intelligence in it and a healing capacity in it, a return to wholeness on an emotional, physical, and mental level. But meeting it with tenderness was actually crucial. So many situations that we hear about or meet or have met in our lives where perhaps somebody in a partnership, a marriage or whatever, one becomes sick and the other is, frightened to even meet the feelings around it or the possibility of death. So it's suppressed. Well, that's not healing. That's not wholeness. So meeting what is with tenderness and allowing it all to be here, even the possibility of death, which, we met with your situation, well, maybe he's not going to be here anymore. Maybe this is part of the playing out. And there's a great, tenderness in that. Well, that's it. I think all these factors and ways of being actually had a great impact on the healing that has taken place. That's not what happens in the conventional world.
No doubt. I mean, your tenderness without pampering, tenderness and leaving alone, tenderness without, necessarily not bringing anything of yours. You didn't have anything. Kind of really did allow organically this healing, if you like, on many different levels of my being to just sort of play itself out. I had no idea what was actually going on. It was thanks to your tenderness is true and truth, to not turn it into something more than it was. Well, if I'm gonna die, this is written in the records somewhere.
Yes, unlike, my mother and her husband who got very ill and was dying. And she felt resentful. She felt he'd abandoned her. She felt she'd been punished and let down, and she resented him. And that bitterness and resentment turned into a further contraction for him because he couldn't, express his own feelings. Yeah. Of course, he died, and it wasn't very pleasant. Mm-hmm. And this happens all the time in the world, unconsciously. That's not the way to be.
Wow.
Same with everything. Amazing, we have a pet or something, tenderness, kindness, being with it, not creating a drama or a victim self out of it. It's primary. And then if death happens, at least it's a release, a letting go, not a punishment.
Yeah. I think, in conclusion, I learn from you all the time, that don't to not split ourselves up anymore. Yeah, we've done with the splitting up, not you and I, but everybody. We've been split up. We've separated ourselves, separated our experience, separated everything off. Well, I want this and I don't want this. And that maybe has worked for some period of time. And then it stops working. And then what? Then you have to respond in a way at some point on the deeper and deeper levels to what you're talking of. Even this, open up, even this. And there is a deep grace in that. Because you end up in the arms of God, I swear to God, in the arms of grace,
that's
one
right.
should say. So I thank you so much, Amoda. I think we're finished, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes. Good. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. We hope you've, enjoyed or been stirred or stimulated a little bit by this conversation with Amoda Maa. We'll be back soon with another conversation. Please subscribe if you're watching this anywhere like YouTube or something. And that's it. Over and out from me. Take care. Thank you so much, Amoda. Namaste to you.
Namaste.
Be well.